Stop me if you've heard this before. The Raptors got to take on another top 10 team, and they ultimately lost. But there were some positives to take from it this time. Let's talk about it.
This is the Raptors Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Toronto Raptors. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of the Raptors Postcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 sports podcast network covering your team every day. Coming to you live after the Raptors' 111-95 loss against the New York Knicks on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Locked On Podcast feed. I'm Zulfi, Sheikh, credentialed journalist covering the Raptors and the NBA for over 2 years now with outlets like Sportsnet and Raptors Republic. And now I'm also one of your humble hosts of the Raptors Postcast, breaking down each and every game with you. And with me is Duane Notice, aka Dino. He's back, our professional basketball player and analyst. Duane has represented Canada, and he's been part of the Raptors system with the Raptors 905. And he's still hooping professionally in leagues like the CEBL. And not to put you on the spot here, Duane, but very quick, your CEBL teammate, Tyree Samuel of the Vancouver Bandits, just got acquired by the Raptors 905. He's joining the system. Just very quickly, how cool is that to see one of your teammates accomplish that?
Oh, it's awesome. About time. I'm always bragging about how Ontario is way better than where he at in Quebec. So it's good to see him, play for the home team and play for an organization that I play for. I know he's going to have a great time in the city, enjoy himself with the food, the culture, the fans, and just having an opportunity to showcase his talents.
Absolutely. Another Canadian back north of the border, the reigning Canadian player of the year in the CBL, by the way. So it'll be exciting to see what he does. But we are here to talk Raptors basketball. On tonight's show, we're going to cover how the Raptors let another win against a top 10 team unfortunately slip away. We'll break down that lackluster offense, especially in the fourth quarter. We'll get some thoughts from our resident pro with a segment we like to call Take Notice. And then we'll wrap things up by handing out our player of the game. And Duane, this was a pretty easy one to break down going into it. There was two key stats here that the Raptors were concerned with coming into this game. The first one was they're 4-15 entering this game against top 10 teams. And the second one was they had lost 11 straight games to the Knicks. Those were the two things they had to try to answer in this one. There was nowhere for them to hide as they host the Knicks tonight. They had to try to take care of that. And with just 22 games left until the playoffs, this was a big measuring stick moment for the Raptors. Could they match up with them? Could they kind of show that they belong in this upper echelon of the Eastern Conference? And we can dive into what our full answers are on that in a bit. But knowing that's the adversity they had to go against coming into this game, how do you believe they responded to that?
I think it was tough. Like you said, the test is a great word. I would even call it a barometer when you face a team with a Knicks caliber of seeing how far the Raptors have to go to be a championship contending team, but also where they are in the pack, but also where they need to go, right? So I think that the Raptors had a good opportunity ahead of themselves today. I know they weren't, competing with the full slate. CNB didn't compete tonight, but at the same time, you have to relish at these opportunities. I think the Raptors did as much as they could. They showed, spurts, especially in that third quarter. I know we'll talk about it in detail a little bit later, but I feel like it's a missed opportunity to show the league, to show the Eastern Conference, the just where you are as a team when it comes to the NBA with the Toronto Raptors. And I just think it was a lot of missed opportunities and mistakes. And the margin of error tends to shrink when you play a team of this type of caliber. So again, in the second half, they were unable to kind of, complete the story, the comeback story. And I think that was kind of the issue. But for them going up against the Knicks is still kind of showing that the dominance the Knicks has over the Raptors and how they have to continue to showcase themselves and put themselves in a better position to kind of showcase the rest of the league in the Eastern Conference. The Raptors are serious. And one of the words that we hate to use in the basketball world is front runners. And sometimes I feel like the Raptors are presenting themselves as front runners, meaning they beat the teams they're supposed to play. But when it comes to, the teams that are top 10 in the league, it's kind of like they're struggling. And we got to figure out a solution, a formula to why that is. And I think that going forward, they have to do a better job of controlling that narrative.
Yeah, I think you used some very key words there. The big one for me is margin of error. It's razor thin when it comes to these top teams in the NBA. Like whether it's offensively or defensively, you're not going to stop everything that's happening either to you or against you. And you have to be very strategic about what you either give up or what you try to take the other way. And the Raptors at times just kind of slip up on like you say this word all the time, their principles. What are they trying to game plan for coming in and what are they trying to execute? And getting to do that for a full 48 minutes is something that has escaped the Raptors. I said this on the last postcast. RJ Barrett mentioned it when he was asked, like, what does it take to go from good to great? it's being consistent. It's doing it for the full 48 minutes. And one big part of why the Raptors struggle against top 10 teams, a part of their game that is very important, obviously, is the offense. And I want to touch on that in our next segment, which is going to be our talking point of the game. So let's get to it.
This is what you'll be talking about.
All right, Duane, I'm not sure if you knew this part of the stats before. So obviously we said the Raptors are 4-15 against top 10 teams. And a big part of that is that their offense essentially tanks when they play against top 10 teams. They're not a fantastic offense to begin with. We know that truthfully. They're middle of the pack. They're 15th in the NBA offensively. But against top 10 teams, that drops to 24th. So you're talking bottom 10, almost bottom 5. Now, their defense, which is top 10 in the NBA, that relatively stays the same. It goes from 7th to 10th. So for the most part, their defense can manage against top 10 teams. They try to keep up that way. But offensively, they just can't seem to execute with the same effectiveness, if you want to call it that, against middling teams. And you saw it kind of really bite them in this game tonight. We call this a talking point, but this could very well be our turning point as well, because with 5:50 to go, the Raptors are down to 95-93. And what do they do over the final 5 minutes? They go 1 of 9 from the field. They make they score like 2 points. Again, I'm not even sure if there was a field goal there. It might have been off free throws, but essentially the Raptors offense completely disappears. And I have more thoughts on that specifically, but why do you think it is against these top teams that the Raptors offense, whether it's tonight specifically or in general, just can't seem to figure it out?
I think just a lack of ability to make adjustments, especially in the second half. A lot of teams, when they go into halftime, they come out, they make adjustments on the defensive end towards the Raptors. And I think the Raptors are just late to reacting on how they're going to attack those adjustments. And I think for them also, it's like just a tale of two different halves. In the first half, especially we talk about Brandon Ingram, who had that explosive first half and that scoring flurry of points. 3 levels. We speak about it all the time, his gifted ability to score the rock, but it's the positions he's scoring it in. Like he came off a curl. He was able to, get to his midi. He's able to come off action and use the bigs and use Scotty and get screen and rolls and get goal screens. And in the second half, I find that goal is missing. It's absent. It's more so just isolation basketball. It seems like, come on, try and save us. Scotty, try and make a play. BI try and make a play. And when the defense is loaded up onto him, it's hard for him to, get the best shots possible. And I think the Knicks did a great job of forcing him to make tough shots. And like I said, he had an explosive offensive night, but at the same time, he wasn't able to put together in the second half. And I think that's because the Raptors just abandoned their principles when it comes to their offensive philosophies, right? Like we know they play fast and they're good at, making the other teams pay when they turn them over and they're able to score. We know there's a fluidity there when they're attacking downhill, but when it comes to 18 seconds on the shot clock, 17 seconds on the shot clock in the half court setting, for some reason they're unable to find a flow and a rhythm. And I think that just starts from the play calling, but also just being more intentional about what they're trying to run. Again, I speak about it all the time, but in the first 2 quarters, it seemed like we knew we were getting BI the ball at the elbow. You're getting the ball to him at the wing. In the second half, I feel like there's like broken offense. Feels like there's that gray area of like there might be transition, but there's not. So when we hold it up into the secondary option, it's like, what are we going to do? All right, pass the ball to BI. He's going to try and make something work. Oh, shot clock is now down to 5, 4, 3, 2. It's the grenade now. You got to take a horrible shot. So again, for the Raptors going forward, they have to figure out a way to have some type of clear direction of what they're trying to run in terms of a package, what they put together when they're on the court together.
Yeah, I think that the big word that you use for me was intentionality with it. It's like, what are you looking to accomplish offensively? What are you looking to execute? It's just like you said, a lot of it disappears for them in the second half of games. You said it yourself. Brandon Ingram finishes with 31 points. He had 25 at halftime. You're right. He was absolutely cooking. He started 4 of 6 from the field. They were feeding him into his spots, and he was making some tough shots. He was also very much in attack mode. He was trying to get to the free throw line. He had 4 free throws in the first quarter. Again, a lot of that disappears. Now, some of that is to your other point is defensively, teams adjust against them, and they're forcing other guys to make shots. And that's another thing for the Raptors. It's like they, for some reason, earlier on the games, their ancillary players can hit shots for them. The Raptors start 4 of 6 from 3 in this game. They go 4 of 22 the entire rest of the game from downtown. So guys aren't rewarding the effort and execution with hitting their shots, right? Because like the Raptors very much have been a victim of this before, where they generate a lot of good shots, but they don't necessarily hit all of them. And if you look at your bench tonight specifically, the production there was just not there. Like Mamu finishes with 3 points, Jacoby finishes with 2. And that's essentially all you get from your bench. You get 5 points, and then you have a guy like Landry Shamet who puts up a 12 off the bench for the Knicks. Mohamed Diawara, who's been kind of a revelation for them. He goes 3 of 6 from the field. He hits 2 threes. He has 8 points. And this was interesting too, because Darko basically tried to go for almost a playoff-like rotation for most of the game. He only really was relying on 8 guys. So I think this was very much a test for his team about like, how are we going to look if we're in a matchup against these guys, whether it's in the first round or second round. And I want to see what my rotation is really going to look like. And they just, again, once the Knicks were able to adjust to them in the second half, the Raptors offense kind of completely left them. You finish 45% from the field, 28%, 27% from 3. And it's just like you said, tale of two halves, and it just keeps getting away from them, and they're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think it could be as simple as this, right? When it comes to the game of basketball, it comes down to making shots or missing them. We talk about it's a make or miss league all the time. But the lack of efficiency from behind the arc, I think, is a real issue when it comes to moments like this. Like I mentioned, when you're making certain turnovers, making certain mistakes, you're allowing a guy like Mikal Bridges to get a wide open leak out bucket in transition late in the game. Like that kind of stuff cannot be glossed over and looked over when you're unable to hit threes that can get you out of those tough situations and spots that keeps you in the game. So for them, they have to figure out ways to make these shots. And again, as a player, I know this myself, it's so deflating when you're able to generate open shots on top of open shots on a consistent basis and the shot is not going in. There's only so many times you can look to your teammate and say, it's all right, man, the next one's going in, especially after you're working hard, penetrating, drive, kick, swing, and it's just not falling. Again, it's a game of basketball. You're going to miss shots. Not everybody's going to make every shot they take. But at the same time, I feel like when you have guys like Shed or guys who are, Scotty and Mama who are playing, intense defense at the top, got that steal in the fourth quarter. Like when you're executing on the defensive end, but you're unable to put the ball in on the offensive end, it does weigh on you mentally. It does weigh on you physically. I think we start to see that when it comes to the Raptors, because like you mentioned, they're a great and a good defensive team and not a great offensive team. So when their defense is, going all out and they're unable to put the ball in the basket, you can kind of see how it can kind of trickle down to their defense. And then they're starting to make boneheaded mistakes that, in turn end up, helping them lose the game.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up the point about like rewarding your defense. And I think that is what the Raptors really missed, especially towards the end of this game tonight. Look, I won't say the Raptors were phenomenal defensively in this game. They had some really good moments. Scotty Barnes was flying everywhere at times. He had some really good highlight plays, like blocking Cat early in the game, forcing an air ball, and Mikal Bridges late. The Knicks ultimately shoot 57% from the field, 35% from downtown. Again, passable. That shouldn't be the end all be all of it. But again, you have to reward your defensive effort. When the Raptors are able to chain together stops, like in the third quarter, when they cut this deficit down to 3, you hold the Knicks to 19 points and your offense isn't phenomenal, but you're doing just enough offensively. You're scoring just enough and you're able to claw yourself back into it. But in the fourth quarter, especially early, when you are able to manage some stops, putting up 1 point, 1 basket in the last 5 minutes, is just not going to keep you in any possible game or situation. So you have to reward what you're doing defensively by executing on the other end and finding ways to be intentional about it. And unfortunately, the Raptors weren't able to do that tonight as a whole. Now, there were, like you said, some positive performances if you want to highlight them, and I'm sure we will more later. One of them is RJ Barrett, and we're going to talk about him on the other side of this break as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast after this. All right, this episode is brought to you by Indeed. Let's talk about workplace chaos. Deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and that one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, that is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, whether that's skills, experience, and location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who actually check all your boxes on Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get you your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hire? That's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. This episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. Now, March is a time to celebrate women, especially around International Women's Day, and to recognize just how much they carry, whether that's at work, in relationship, in families, and in all the unseen roles they step into every day. Now, it's easy to celebrate that strength, but it's just as important to make space for their emotional well-being. And honestly, that goes for all of us. I think about my wife as a person in healthcare, how much she carries every day without always saying so, and how many of us do the exact same thing. The roles we play, the expectations we carry, and the pressures we don't always talk about. Therapy can help with all of that, creating balance, setting healthy boundaries, and supporting our overall well-beings. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, and it works. Your emotional well-being matters, and you can find that support and feel lighter through therapy. So sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. And finally, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop. There's big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. So from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And oh, baby, we are getting really close to start filling out some brackets. I'm sure Duane's going to be picking South Carolina if I had to guess. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential bigger potential wins with college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, whether that's rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your needs. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. So go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, and now it has more upside behind it. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. All right, as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast, be sure to check out Sean Woodley with Locked On Raptors in the morning to get more in-depth analysis of the Raptors' 111-95 loss to the New York Knicks. And now it's time for a segment we like to call Take Notice, where our resident pro, Duane Notice, gives us his observations from this game. And did Duane take it away?
Yeah, today's Take Notice for tonight's game is the return of Star J. Like you said, RJ returning back to his true form, at least getting close to it. We see him finding his rhythm, finding his groove. And I think it started from him just working his way inside out. That's the RJ that I've become accustomed to seeing or grown up watching and playing with or working out with, is a guy who's a dog, a competitor who likes to make his work known in the paint, and he gets downhill. For me, it was a good sight seeing that he's 1 for 3 from the three-point line instead of seeing him attempt more threes, and I feel like sometimes he settles. So for him, having his head down, going to the basket, making intentional plays, I think paid off for him, and it's a great sight to see. But we all know RJ is not 100% right now. He's not extremely explosive, but he comes from a great lineage of basketball. So I think that him just being a smart player, having great experience in the family, and knowing how to play, he knows how to be effective on the offensive end. So for him, just continuing to be efficient, 9 for 13, 20 points, and just understanding that he's still, getting a couple assists, he's still being able to, compete on the defensive end. I think it's just going to be great for his confidence going forward. But like I said, going forward, I want to see him continue to attack the basket, get to the free throw line. And even though as a player in the first quarter, second quarter, sometimes you might get a drive, a player who penetrates and kicks it out to you, you might be wide open. But for a guy like RJ, I would like to see him attack the basket, even on those type of opportunities where he can get to the line and then warm up his free throw. And then once the shot starts going from there, you still feel more comfortable. Then you start taking more threes. But again, for him, I love the fact that he attacked the basket today, and he was able to continue to put his team in a position to come back and potentially win the game, especially in the fourth quarter where he had 9 points. And I think he exploded. So for him, a game for his character, a game for just his role on the team, and I think a game for his confidence going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned it, especially important. He had 9 points in the fourth quarter, the first 9 points consecutively for the Raptors in the fourth quarter. Like, we saw what this Raptors offensive ceiling is when RJ Barrett is at his maximum. It was able to boost this half-court offense specifically by a lot. When you have RJ Barrett basically as your play finisher, that is an elite option to have, whether that's a pass coming off a Brandon Ingram double, a Scotty Barnes is finding you slashing or cutting through. And then when you have a guy like RJ who can finish through contact, who can get those deep drives like you're talking about, those paint touches, it forces defenses to bend, and it allows you just more optionality as an offense. And that's exactly what the Raptors need, especially in the half-court setting. When you have an offense that seems to kind of disappear as the game goes on, especially against more physical opponent, a guy who can carve out advantages in as many ways as possible, it's exactly what you need. Because if one guy doesn't have it going, hopefully the other guy does, or the other guy. And that's what RJ Barrett, when he's at his best, can provide. And in the fourth quarter, he had himself going. That opened up a couple other things. Later, that led to an Emmanuel Quickly a three-pointer as well, which was basically their only other basket in the fourth quarter for most of it. So his ability when he's at his maximum really does open up things for this Raptors team. And you have to, like, come playoff time, that's going to be very important for them, is having the finishing ability of RJ Barrett be at its best. And if you want to leave this game with anything, because I truly do believe that although the Raptors lost again to the Knicks, although it was another loss to the top 10 team, you play good for much of this game, that you have to try to find something from it as either a learning point, a solution, a silver lining, whatever you want to call it. And if you can leave it with RJ Barrett kind of getting back closer toward his maximum potential, you take that and hopefully see that as a solution moving forward. Duane, another guy who had his moments in this game was Brandon Ingram, and he may be our player of the game. I don't know that for sure. Maybe I'm teasing a little early here, but let's talk about our player of the game and see who we give it to.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
All right, like I said, you could go a couple ways about this, Duane. Obviously, Brandon Ingram, 31 points on a pretty efficient 11 of 20 from the field. He hits 3 threes. He gets to the line for 6 free throws. You had a guy like IQ, not the most efficient night, 4 of 14 from the field, but he has a double-double with 13 points, 12 assists. RJ Barrett, again, 20 points on 9 of 13. Scotty Barnes, you could say, had a more quiet night in terms of 14 points. He still had 3 steals. I thought for basically the first 3 quarters, he did a pretty darn good job against Jalen Brunson, who finishes with 26 points on 10 of 22 shooting. But Jalen Brunson is an all-NBA caliber player for a reason. In the fourth quarter, he kind of did his thing, especially late there. But Scotty Barnes, he finishes a -2, which was the best of all starters here. So if you have to look at those guys that I named, or if you want to go somewhere else, who do you look at as the player of the game?
For me, I got to go Brandon Ingram. I know he was unable to put together a complete game, but I mean, just the fact that he was able to showcase and display his ability again on the offensive end, but also on defense, right? We saw him with a couple strips, a couple blocks, his ability to pass the ball, his ability to limit the turnovers. I think it's just like a next progression for him, and we see him continue to ascend in his game, and this, putting the team on his back, putting the city on his back, and just embracing the role of what he's came here for. And I think that Brandon Ingram, his ability to score at all 3 levels is something that I'll never get tired of witnessing and watching on an everyday basis. But like I said, I want to see him be able to get easier opportunities also in the third and fourth quarter, because as the game goes on, it's hard to sustain that level of creativity on the offensive end. Like, you have to have some type of sets that are going to be able to get him easier buckets and opportunities to close the game for you. But Brandon Ingram did his job staying in the game. And also, I feel like maybe the reason why he struggled a bit outside of the Knicks, intense defense loading up to him, especially when he caught the ball on the wing. I also believe that, we saw him laboring a bit because he hurt his wrist, and maybe that kind of contributed to it as well. But again, hot start, efficient game for BI. And again, he continues to show why he was an all-star this year.
Yeah, I would love to add any more great analysis to this, but all I really want to say is it is so fun to watch this guy hoop, especially when he's in heat check mode, and some of the stuff he was doing early in this game. He just had guys flying by him like they weren't even there. He had a crossover on Landry Shamet where he literally just blew by him, got free throws. And then he had that sweet up and under move on Mitchell Robinson where the dude, I just saw a 7-footer fly, literally just leave the ground and disappear out of frame. And that's what Brandon Ingram at his best can do. That's exactly what the Raptors want closing games. And like you said, they're going to have to find ways to make it happen, because it's almost like this push and pull. He knows that's his role, and he knows he's there to provide offense. But when he's basically facing this amount of immense pressure and no one else has it going, well, then that's why he starts forcing it more too. Some of his shots in the fourth quarter especially pretty much felt like, screw it, I got to try something. No one else has it going, right? So he needs to find ways to make things easier for himself, but so do the Raptors, to your point. It's a push and pull where they have to work off of each other to make this relationship in these clutch situations easier, because I don't think anyone doubts Brandon Ingram has the talent to make it happen in the fourth quarter. We've seen him hit a couple game winners already for the Raptors. He had that one against the Pacers over Pascal Siakam earlier on the season. We know what kind of player he can be in the clutch, but when he's facing that intense pressure and no one else can really get it going outside of, again, like RJ Barrett just having the ball in his hands and hitting some really tough shots, you're not going to get much flow offensively. And that is something the Raptors have to figure out. But unfortunately for them, with all that said and done, the Raptors lose their 12th straight game to the Knicks, OG Anunoby, I believe, is now 7-0 against the Raptors, still undefeated against his former team. And Toronto falls to 35-26. They're now just a game and a half ahead of the Philadelphia 76ers. But Duane, and for everyone listening, I think that pretty much does it for us. So for myself and Duane Notice, thank you to everyone who tuned in live and for those listening the morning after. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Raptors on all platforms. Don't forget to comment below if you have any thoughts. We'll be back on Thursday live after the Raptors visit Anthony Edwards, who, by the way, torched the Raptors in the fourth quarter the last time they faced them, and his Minnesota Timberwolves. So hopefully the Raptors can get some comeback against another top 10 team. 5 of their 9 next games are against top 10 teams. So this is an opportunity for them. Duane says it all the time. It's an opportunity to do something. But we will see you then breaking it all down on the Raptors postcast. Peace.